Okay, we're live.
All right, it is 4:30. I'd like to welcome all of you who have joined us this afternoon. If you're able, I'd like to ask you to stand and please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if we could have a roll call, please.
Pete Hamill.
Here.
Sean Brewster.
Here.
Brad Hand.
Here.
Wayne Barahona.
Here.
Tom Eggers.
All right, and then we have the agenda before us. I would like to move a portion of the consent agenda discussing the board appointments, because there's a new one in there that you haven't probably heard about yet. So move that to a separate discussion, just for your approval. Okay. Okay, it's now. No, it's not in there. Okay, never mind. Forget what I just said. We have the agenda. Is it approved? Approval for it as presented.
So moved.
Support. All in favor? Oh, no, roll call, please.
Barahona.
Aye.
Brewster.
Aye.
Hamill.
Aye.
Hand.
Aye.
All right. Okay, now we have time for public comments. I know Pete and Karen, you're here. Are there any other individuals who want to have any public comments they'd like to make at this time? Seeing no one, we'll turn it over to whoever's going to speak for you guys. State your name, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Vandenberg, and I live at 821 11th Street. My first time here, so I do anything incorrectly, let me know. This afternoon, my concern, I wrote a letter a few weeks ago, and I believe you all got them in your packets, whether you read them in depth or were able to feel what I feel when I wrote it. That I don't know. My concern is over the last 5 years, I've had 4 incidences of sewer backup in my basement. And in my attempt to be humorous during a rough time, I kind of did the math and said if I'm here another 20 years, I'll have sewer in my basement another 16 years. Those are pretty alarming numbers. Then something even more alarming to me, and of greater concern, is our insurance agent has told us that our insurance may drop us because of all the claims. I'm going to break away from my letter a little bit because, you know, this is just news that I got yesterday. I don't know if you can understand how it feels. My insurance drops me. Then my mortgage company is going to want all their money because I don't have insurance. And then I lose my home, all because of the sewer lines in Sheldon. It's a pretty sick feeling. I talked at length with Sam last night. He called to get some numbers of our damages. You know, and today I woke up this morning and I thought, you know, we didn't start off on the right foot. I was upset about the whole insurance deal. He's the first guy that lent his ear to me, and I spent a great deal of time letting him know how I felt. And so I felt like maybe I owed him an apology. I believe he was trying to help me. But now I don't know if that's true. 20 minutes ago, I got a call. He says, we'd like to settle this outside, council room. We'd like to pay you off, and you'll sign a sheet that says you'll never sue us. What does that say to you? Kind of sounds like a bribe. I don't know if I can say that. Are you trying to shove something under the rug? What's going on? We can't fix the problem. Nobody can stand here and say it's not going to happen again, yet I might lose my home. It's a pretty sick feeling. And I believe that I have friends up there that care. And I believe it only takes one. I don't need a consensus. I need one person to care that can call my insurance and say, what do you need to save Peter's home? What can we do? And then act on what they're asking. It's simple. I've done nothing wrong except bought a house in Sheldon on 11th Street. We know that it's one of the oldest lines in the city. It's not a secret. I believe everybody knows that. Sam asked me a question last night. Why is it just going in your house? Well, I have a theory. I don't know what it's actually called. I call it a water cannon. They stick it down the manhole cover at 8th Avenue and 11th Street, and they flush it down the mains. And I don't know how big the main is. I'm saying 10, 12 inches. I could be wrong, could be right. So anyway, I believe there is a blockage, or at least a partial blockage. And that water will stream past the first couple of houses. It hits that blockage just like pouring a beer into a glass. It doesn't stay in the bottom. It curls back around. And then you got water coming this way, you got water coming this way. And where's it going to go? But down my 4-inch pipe that flows better than the city line does. So my concern today is, in 2017, I accepted that you cannot control what people flush down the toilet. I accept that. And I took it upon myself. You know, the first time we put in a new sewer line, we thought that was going to fix the problem. Only made it worse. The last time, Fred's Plumbing said, get some of those screw-in plugs, put them in your drain, and that'll fix the problem. And under normal pressure, if it backed up, it's only going to come up to my drain. It's not going to get into my basement. It's only got to go further up the line. But because we decide or we use the water cannon, it goes down there and it blew the plugs right out of my drain. And so came the sewage. Even if it was a minute, it was enough to destroy my basement. So my point is, I'm not arguing what got flushed. I'm arguing the way it's handled. I believe that water cannons should be banned. If that's the problem, that you're shoving sewage into other people's houses, 2017 on 10th Street, I believe that's on my letter. A guy has a shower and a bathroom in his basement, and it blew sewage all over his walls and his ceiling. Is that acceptable to anyone here? I cannot believe so. I can talk all day, and I can't find one person that disagrees with me. Yet, here I am, fighting to keep my home. My other concern is, obviously, my insurance is my biggest concern, and I'd like to keep my home. And I hope somebody that's going to step up and say, yeah, that's mine. I'm going to take it. I'm going to run with it. I'm going to fix it. The next time, I might have got a one-time reprieve. The next time I get sewer in my background, in my basement, I'm going to lose my insurance coverage. That's what we found out today. They gave me a one-day reprieve, or a one-time reprieve. At least they gave me a warning. So, in lieu of fixing the sewer line, what can we do? That's up to you. You'll have to discuss it, I believe, probably after I leave. I don't know how this all works. I don't know if you have questions for me, if that's even legal.
Yes, if anybody has questions, now would be the time. If you're done with what you have for the time being.
Todd, could you give us some background on how the equipment is used and just basically how we've kind of gotten to this point from your understanding?
So the sewer jet or water cannon, as Pete describes it, is, I mean, that's standard equipment to clean sewers with. It is a hose that has a high pressure nozzle on the end of it, and it propels itself down the sewer by squirting water backwards. Imagine a pressure washer with nozzles that squirt backwards. That's how it propels itself down the line. It also has nozzles that shoot forward, and it also has an oscillating nozzle that goes around, and that's how it cleans the pipe. If we are just jetting normal maintenance jetting, so we go out and we normal maintenance jet, the goal is to hit every sewer in town a minimum of every other year. For instance, I looked for record just because I knew Pete was coming, and we've been in that line in 2012, 2014, 2015, 2017, and we're planning to be in that line the fall of 2019, not because there's issue, but on general maintenance. I did look back on history or calls in the 800 block as well to see how often we had been there. 2013, there was one closer to Frank Lipke's house. 2015, we had a complaint but didn't find anything wrong. 2017, we had 3 calls on that block. One of which there was a bad plug near the 821 address, which we cleared. And the other one was down by Frank's house again, so further to the east or downstream of their house. But being downstream, a plug downstream would actually cause us trouble for the people upstream. That makes sense. So the difference on the current complaint is that we were actually jetting upstream. So our jet was 2 blocks away from their home. We cleared. There was a plug in the 1000 block of 11th Street, which we cleared with the sewer jet. But that just allows it to then run downhill, so to speak. It wouldn't be under pressure. We're never under pressure. We don't cap the ends. There's pressure water squirting, but we're not under pressure. If that makes sense. It's not a water pipe, right?
So you're saying what's beyond the block is not pressurized?
So none of it's pressurized. It's all gravity.
Sure.
But when you have a blockage, then you'll have sewage builds up on the upstream side of the blockage. So if you clear the blockage, you now have
Head pressure almost.
Yeah, whatever. Let's say you've got 3 feet of water in a manhole and a full pipe. Pete's not wrong. Most of our sewers are somewhere between 8 and 12 inches in diameter. So if you've got a block of pipe that's full of water and a manhole that's 3 feet deep or fuller, depending upon how far it's backed up, when you relieve that plug, you will get water that runs down the line, or a surge of water, I guess I would say. Mm-hmm. That happens every time we plug, or every time there is a plug and it gets unplugged. So we did clear a blockage in the 1000 block on 6.5. That blockage would, and the water associated with that would have ran past their home and every other home on 11th Street.
Pete, in your letter, you indicated that you actually went so far as to take out a second mortgage to put a new line in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So when that line was put in, did Farmers Market, I'm presuming they were the ones that did the work, did they make any indication as to the condition of the line that they were replacing? I mean, was it shot? Do you know? Yeah?
He said to me that there were tree roots and that the ground underneath that I can't get, there were a lot of tree roots. That's why I said, for God's sakes, check it, see if there's tree roots. There were lots of tree roots. You look at them big old maples on 11th Street, you'll know there's tree roots. I mean, that's just happens. Mm-hmm. That's nature. And we're not saying give us money. We want you to fix it. I don't want to go through this, what we have 4 times again.
Right.
You don't have a clue. Last time it was 3 inches, this time it was 2. It's disgusting. I've had people say you should have taken bags and given them to the city. I said, well, that's not right. But if you'd have seen it, if you'd have been there to clean it again, then maybe you'd understand and you'd want to find out and go do something. And this, I know, Todd, this is what they do for maintenance. For God's sake, there has to be something else. and it shows everything. He's got, somebody said that they can scan on the road, and it'll show you.
So in March of 18, we did run a camera in the main line on 11th Street with the city's camera. So the city has their own camera, but if we need a more in-depth or a better image, then we contract it. As I mentioned to Mayor Gills today, we have a cheap camera that only gives us limited. We only paid $10,000 for it. Unfortunately, $10,000 doesn't get you a lot in camera technology. But irregardless, we did camera it. There were some roots present in the sewer. That's not shocking to me. There are some roots present in mini sewers. I think we should probably camera it again. Maybe I should have rehab systems come in with a better camera and have them run down the line. If Pete has a theory, if his theory would hold true, that camera would tell us that. Yeah, that's something I could line up in not very long.
Appreciate something, for God's sakes. This is ridiculous. We lost so much.
You brought up farmers market. You know, every summer somebody's replacing a sewer line, digging up their front yard, and we know that there's going to be problems in our sewers in Sheldon. It's not just 11th Street or 10th Street. There was numerous. You know, once you're one of those, and everybody starts talking. But my advice is, you know, right now I'm preparing to put a backflow in there, just another protection against the city. My plugs didn't work. Now I got to put a backflow to keep it from coming in. Each time I've done something to try to eliminate it, and I lose. But when Farmers Market puts those lines in, or anybody puts a line in, I think we should let them know, hey, it'd be a good idea to put this backflow system in. You know, it's going to save you a lot of money in the long run. Probably cost you $100 to put it in while you're putting your line in. Just makes sense to me.
Now, when you're talking about the line you put in, that's the line from the house to the main, correct?
Right.
Which is
If I had
our
known
responsibility.
that I was going to have a problem, that backflow would have went in.
Mm-hmm. Understand.
And now I got to do it after the fact, which I heard is about $800 to $1,000.
And there's one other thing. Could we be notified when we're going to be jetted? I mean, as a board, I'd like to know. I wouldn't walk on my
Karen, can you come forward, please, so we can get it on?
Sorry. Could we be notified when we're being jetted? Because I left the house, everything was fine. I had laundry going, took my 2 grandkids to the park and rec stuff, came home about 1 something, sat outside till 10 to 2 and walked into, dear God, thought I was going to throw up and see it floating across in your basement. It's not a pretty scene, but it'd be nice. If you're going to do it, we're in the neighborhood at least. Because when you say it wasn't under pressure, something blew those plugs. Honest to God, they don't just...
Can't argue with that.
So, yeah, Karen, I'm not going to argue the point. I'm not arguing whether it blew up. But I am telling you that the pipe is not pressurized, okay? I don't want anybody to think that this pipe is pressurized like a water main is. It is not. And it's also a little hard to figure out, and I like to understand things, but that same surge ran by 100 homes. And I know it only went in yours, or that's what you're telling me. And you called within an hour after we put the jet away. So there's some correlation there. I get that. Read the letter I sent to the insurance company. That's what I told them as well.
And she said after their investigation, they found no fault. Nobody ever came to our house, not one person, except our own insurance. So what investigation?
I'm assuming, I can't speak for the insurance company. They called me and talked to me. I sent them information via email. What their investigation is up to them. I don't investigate, they do.
I think the best thing we need to do is hire that firm to come in with a good camera, scope those 3 blocks out, and see if we as the city has an issue in that line. And then we can see if we have to, what the next step is.
That makes sense.
Because we don't know, sitting here, what that condition of that line is.
So what we saw in 2018 is a small picture, right?
Yeah.
We didn't see anything that was hugely alarming, but that was 14 months ago.
Yeah.
Things change. We can
Want
certainly.
to make a comment?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. So I think what Brad suggested is good, along with the motion that is in front of you. I need everybody to know this, that when this came up, and it was alluded to a few minutes ago, Todd filed the claim. We filed the claim with ICAP. We took the initiative. We do not engineer how the claims are handled. We provide the information and we let the adjuster make the decision. I knew that this was a difficult issue, so I wanted to be able to bring forward options for the council to consider. And the one of the options that you have is that rarely used moral obligation to pay benefit from ICAP, which Iowa Community Assurance Pool, which they will reimburse the city for 75% up to $5,000. That requires an indemnification agreement, Peter. And I was just calling to tell you what the motion was. Or the recommendation was. That's protocol and that's process. In most cases, these types of claims are denied. All of my years of experience in these types of claims, I can think of one where ICAP paid, and that's where a brick fell down a manhole that was in a prior community. But I think we can find a way to hopefully resolve this. Peter, I just wanted to clarify. I mean, we weren't able to visit doing what I'm asked to do. Okay. And that's the information from the Iowa Community Assurance Pool, that in order to release that money, there has to be an indemnification agreement signed, and it's public. The media has a draft of a copy of the motion, and I wanted you to have my recommendation prior to the meeting.
Okay. Just made me want to talk that much more. I think that's it for me. Anything else?
Well, thank you.
Thank you
I
for
know
your
this
time.
is-
Yeah, and I think that we ought to proceed with running a camera down that and see what else needs to happen there.
Having gone through this similar experience some years ago in a former house, I sense your frustration as well. It's every time there's a rainstorm, anytime you lay again. So we are going to get to the bottom of this.
We're going to try to get to the bottom of
We're
it,
going to
but
try
there's
to
some
get to the
things we
bottom.
just don't know and we never know.
It's important to understand we'll camera the line, and that'll give us some level of information, but I'm not guaranteeing you that's going to give you the definitive answer that you want. That yes, there's an obvious problem just downstream of the 821 service that caused the issue. We'll see what we see, but there's no guarantee you're going to get a definitive answer that that's the issue or that there is an issue.
Yeah.
You know, you need to understand there are many times we get service calls for sewer work. We find absolutely nothing wrong. And it could be because there's an issue in the private service. It could be because it cleared. It could be because the jet goes through and we don't see anything coming back. You know, pretty obvious when you look in a manhole downstream and there's no water. Look in the manhole upstream, there's a bunch of water. That means it's not getting from point A to point B. But if you open up manholes on either end of a property, you see flow going through both sides, and you run the sewer jet through and you don't hit anything, I don't know what else you expect us to do on a regular basis, or there's nothing else in our current protocols to do on a regular basis. I don't know what else we would do. That takes time, and I don't know that it's reasonable to camera the entire town all the time.
So we have a couple of different options before us. One is the recommended motion that Sam handed out ahead of time. Brad, your suggestion, I'm assuming could be a motion.
I would like to look into to see if there's
And I don't know
an
if
actual issue with the main. Then we know that the main's not the problem, it's the consumers. Because otherwise we can be back here 6 months again or 9 months with the same issue.
do we need to have a motion to do that work, I guess is what I'm questioning right now. I think we just direct Todd to do that, get with the bidder, hire it out, get it done.
Yeah, this would be no different than 4th Street. I mean, I don't know if you noticed in the bills or not, we've spent $30-some thousand digging up 4th Street here recently because we were having some issues. We cameraed, and we found 3 locations where there was collapses or were about to collapse. So we dug those up and repaired them.
9th Street by the Christian school, a year or so ago, we came.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big,
Yeah.
So-
Now, there was a case where the whole top of the pipe was missing. I hadn't cameraed that line. We figured out that it was not working because we couldn't get our jet through. We depend upon the jet a lot. It
Yeah.
gives us a lot of information. But, yeah, we'll camera that line, and we'll give you the results.
Okay. That's,
I'll call them tomorrow and see when I can get it on the schedule.
all right, very good.
So then in regards to the recommended motion, I just want to make sure that anything we do isn't going to delay if we're going to vote on something that would be in this moral obligation language that we do so that we don't keep these people hanging.
If you want to keep on an expedited path, if you will, it would be helpful if the homeowners could provide documentation to substantiate what their potential claim would be. And that's the process that we look for from ICAP, correct, Sam?
Yes.
All right. So if that's what you're looking
Yep.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'd be fine.
I can follow up.
Okay. So then Sam will follow up with you as well in terms of securing that documentation that Mike was just talking about. Okay? And we will move forward with that.
Then do we have to make a motion, or are we good?
I think at this time, I think we're good. So, unless somebody disagrees.
No, I'm good.
All right.
Necessary, Mike? No motion. Okay.
All right, let's move on then to the consent.
make the motion to approve.
Support?
Roll call, please.
Brewster.
Aye.
Verona.
Aye.
Kent.
Aye.
Hamel.
Aye.
Right. Nothing under old business. New business. A recommendation from the cemetery board regarding Potter's Field. Anything you want to have to add to that, Sam?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an interesting issue, but really the summary is this is some fairly simple ordinance cleanup. Potter's Field basically isn't usable because the cemetery building is built on top of it. And as we were reviewing the ordinance, this is something that we discovered, so recommend approval.
Questions?
And you may waive second and third if you desire.
Okay.
So you're looking for a motion,
Yes, sir.
and can we waive the second and third?
Yes, you can.
I would so move.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Kent.
Aye.
Hamel.
Aye.
Brewster.
Aye.
Verona.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. We have a resolution approving the golf course usage agreement for fiscal year 2019 and 20. If you remember, this is part of our discussion back when we were working on budget. A commitment of $15,000 to be made in quarterly installments of $3,750. There is a note on our information, too, that they have paid off the land note. That's one of the things we encourage them to do. So can we have a motion to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Question? All in favor? Or, excuse me, roll call, please.
Hamel.
Aye.
Brewster.
Aye.
Kent.
Aye.
Verona.
Aye.
Similar item 5C, is a resolution approving the RIDES Transportation Services Agreement. Again, it just came out in the discussion back in February about budget.
Make the motion to approve.
Support.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Brewster.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Kent.
Aye.
Hamel.
Aye.
All right. Number of resolutions. This one is dealing with the city of Sheldon and Sanford Health regarding the drug discount program. You've read through the information. Basically, this allows them to sell drugs at a reduced cost to those that need help. Motion to approve that as well.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Kent.
Aye.
Brewster.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
Hamel.
Aye.
All right. Next item, item 5E, hiring of a full-time police officer. We have interviewed 4 applicants. There are 2 finalists, and the recommendation is for the hiring of Eric Monarchy. Lyle, is there anything you'd like to say about that?
Happy to be done with the process and happy to see her start.
Okay. And so we are looking for approval of the offer of employment and hiring him.
Make the motion to approve.
Support.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Hamel.
Aye.
Brewster.
Aye.
Kent.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
All right. Moving forward, in terms of appointments to the various boards and commissions, you have that before you. I would like to read that. Just read the names of who will be appointed for the media. To the library board, Kim Hingeveld is being reappointed. She just she filled in a term for a recent resignation. There is one additional board member that we are still trying to find, working with the library board and finding an individual for that position. She is also being reappointed to the Park Board Commission for a 5-year term. And we are also looking for an appointment to one more appointment to that board yet. The Trails Board, Sherry Bossman, Keith Ralston, and Larry Myers, all be reappointed to a 3-year term. The Museum Board, Millie Voss, Tom Worley, and Marlene Pape also being reappointed to a 3-year term. Airport Commission, Josh Kreinbink just began a term recently as well for a term that was vacated. Reappointing him, looking for a replacement for that board yet at this time. For the Planning Commission, Mark Klein-Waltering is being reappointed to a 5-year term. For the Pavilion Board, Mary Walniga and Dr. Aaron Anderson, dentist in Dr. Boer's office, has also agreed to serve on that board. And that's the one name that. So as we're still looking for the library, one each for library, park, airport, and pavilion board. I want to say thank you to all of you that have served in the past for your terms that are expiring. And if there is interest in the future, please let somebody know, whether it's the council or myself or Sam, city offices. If you would be interested in serving in a board at some point down the road, please let us know so we can get your name on a list. So with that, looking for approval of those appointments.
So move.
Support.
Any questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Kent.
Aye.
Hamel.
Aye.
Brewster.
Aye.
Farahona.
Aye.
All right, moving on. Sam, we are ready for your report.
Nothing to add.
Okay. Any comments from council members to the left? To the right?
Nope.
I just have a couple. First one has to do with, I was able to get in on the tail end of the Rise Fest celebration a week ago Saturday. And at one point during the night, looking back over the crowd and listening to the newsboys as they sang, just thought, this town knows how to throw a party. And just grateful to all the volunteers that served with Rise Fest and made that a possibility. It's a great thing for this community, and I'm very proud. And we've got another party coming up this week at Village Northwest with the fireworks. Make the celebration of the 4th on the 3rd a successful event. And again, it takes a lot of volunteers, and thanks again to all of you. If there are no further, that's all the comments I have. So at this point then, we'd like to have Mike Bell come forward and do a presentation on the Crossroads Park. And I think Kurt is also going to be involved. Kurt, do you want to make the opening comments?
Yeah. While Mike gets set up, I'll just do a quick introduction. Got everything there, Mike? Just as a quick background, as you guys recall back, seems like a while ago, all the way back in September of 2018, we first started the discussions of finishing out that whole 40 acres of park that's left over in the Sheldon Crossing development. With that, it was discussed to work with RDG, Mike Bell, and his great architectural team out of Des Moines to put together a steering committee and get as much public involvement as we could with this project. And as you look in front of us, you're looking at a bunch of amendments. We have a number of steering committee members here with us in attendance as well that were presented to them to show, hey, what are we missing? What amenities would we like to see in this park? So as you look at those boards up front, each dot that we're looking at actually represents an individual that actually claimed either yes, I like that, or no. So the green dots are those amenities that were identified as positive. We'd like to see it maybe included in the park, and then the red dots were those that were just maybe not as appealing. So very important exercise as we went through the process. We had great involvement. I think Corey Meyer in the school district, we had all K through 8 students involved. We had presentations from their student leadership groups that helped present this period today. Came out of those very important steering committee meetings, those many public workshops that we hosted and conducted, and most importantly, the feedback from the public. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mike. And Mike, welcome back to Sheldon.
Thank you.
And Mike's going to just lead us through the presentation, answer any questions that we may have at this point, and kind of go from there. So Mike,
Great.
floor is yours.
Thank you, Kurt, very much. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. It is a joy to be back. So.
If you would, please stand by the mic so we can hear it, because this is taped for TV.
So I can see and point, and I want
Whatever make it
to do
work
this
for
if
you.
that works for you.
And use the hand one.
You got a lapel mag if you'd rather have that as well. Two switches on the bottom.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So what I'd like to start off with, there's a great project out there and you're using it right now, and that's a great thing. So our firm did the original citywide park plan, and out of that park plan said that we have a great park system, but there's a lack of open space. And at that time, there was a thought of maybe there's an opportunity out to the west, and if there is, what would be developed in that park? And one of the program items was developing a pavilion or a lodge. I'll walk through that. I think the committee greatly appreciate it. There are always the discussions of who are the deciders? You know, am I the decider on what goes in the park? I'm not. I'm the facilitator of a process, and your community are the deciders of what goes in the park. We had a variety of folks. Love the fact that we had a ton of kids that came to this. In fact, if you take a look at these, all the playgrounds are dotted like crazy, which is a great thing. Families and kids are coming to the events. Quickly go through these. So what we learned in this process was that, one, it's not a sports facility. Two, there's nature out there. Let's do as much as we possibly can with nature. Three, don't overdevelop it. It's a great park right now, great a place that not only the neighborhood, the community, what the surrounding communities can come to and enjoy. So one of the things that we do when we're doing park plans is we often design at scale. And much like what I just said, that this first and foremost is a neighborhood park that absolutely needs to serve that neighborhood so that they can quickly and safely walk across that street and enjoy the amenities. It also wants to be a community park in that it has a pond, it has a water body, you'll create a trail around it. And the benefit of the pavilion, it makes it a regional destination, and it creates a revenue opportunity scale. One of the things we'd like to do early on are just sketch out some of the things that we think we're hearing. So for instance, there was the thought of having a small amphitheater. We sketched this sketch and they said, I want amphitheater, but I don't want that, which is great because sometimes when people say they want something, a word, amphitheater, means something, but an image means a whole lot more. And so we like to have a tendency to draw these little sketches early on. People love the idea of flexible open space. You're already doing this, which is of all of your community members, specifically the aging, young kids, and people with disabilities. People also said, hey, is water edge, or at least to the water, in an active way, in an accessible way. And then making sure that we can use this park through making sure that it is used all 4 seasons. The great thing about where you are is you're centrally located in northwest Iowa. And so when we first got the park plan, there wasn't anything out here but this water body and about 40 acres of tea land and 60-some acres of land that was acquired by you. We went through a series of diagrams, series of sketches, worked with the steering committee. At the time, there's a great interest of having RV camping. The pavilion itself was of interest, but more so was the trail in the neighborhood park. And so we went through these diagrams. Again, when we started working on this, the whole site, what we wanted to do was identify how can we put rooftops of neighbors so that we can create some level of tax base, and how can we create opportunity for commercial development that is a revenue generator. So if you take a look at this plan then, when we finished that original plan, the community building, because that's what we called it back then, we didn't necessarily know what to call it, it wasn't a priority. And once we were done with the plan, as people started talking about the need of this community, some public participation events came forward to the then city administrator and said, I think you're missing this thing. I think we have a real opportunity here for an economic development thing if we were to create a lodge and move that lodge up to one of the primary projects. And so that's what happened. So the original master plan took place, then there was a period of thinking, and then the first thing out of the gun was the thing. And so this was the plan: community building, RV parking, big open space, development, multifamily housing, active. And this is the stuff that we took down to state capital to find out if they would be interested in helping fund a pavilion. And we found out that they were interested in the neighborhood. They loved the idea of the nature, and they loved the idea of creating a lodge so that it could serve not only the community but a larger group. So what I'm trying to show here is then we went through a series of diagrams, and this was a visual option for the lodge. And part of why I'm showing you all of this is to remind us that when you do a master plan, things change. Originally, they said when we were voting, they liked the idea of the Woodland Lodge, but the people who were participating in the steering committee loved the idea of a Price style of architecture. And then some of them also like this more industrial lodge look. And so as that would house about 200, 250 people, that quickly grew as we got into schematic design. And these were the original drawings of that building. And so it was very prairie style. So when you'd walk into it from the north side, it'd be very low. And then when you'd walk through the building, it would step up, step up, step up. And then it would explode when you'd see that lake experience. Quickly go through these. Then as we got into schematic design, I like the look, but I don't want to manage flat roofs. And so we went through a series of modifications of that building so that it fit more of a maintenance desire from your community. And we're still able, though, this is the original drawing that I worked on the top. This was the plan that our firm did down low. It still is able to carry off that still prairie style and large glass on the back side. Why is that important? We're going through the same process right now on this site. The wonderful thing about a building is you really have to build 4 walls and a roof. On a master plan for an entire park, you get to choose what project and the magnitude of that project. And so we've gone through a series of revisions of this master plan, again, over the last 4 or 5 months. And what we've gotten to, don't overdevelop it. We like the idea of creating this great lawn. That great lawn would be irrigated. It'd be flexible. It's the largest lawn that you'd have in your community, and to have a trail on the perimeter of that. It'd be, you'd have bookends on both sides of the neighborhood corner and the pavilion. As we go down, there was a discussion through this series of discussions with the steering committee that there was a need for accessible fishing in this community. And so how would we do that? Could we do it with a pier? And then we also want to have access down the shoreline edge to not only throw a kayak in, but also shoreline fish. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a little bit. This is the second restroom, but this is really our lake access. This is our fishing pier access. And then there's a trail that would go around the perimeter of the park. There would be an amphitheater. And then there's a series of places where you can get down to the shoreline edge. We've actually added parking here, and we've added parking here, and we've added lawn parking right here. And so as we move through the plan, we're now enlarging areas. So right now your parking sits right about here. The plan has always been when this site develops, we can utilize their parking for large major events. We could also park the Great Lawn. You know what would be tremendously beneficial is if we put 35 to 40 stalls just on the west side of the current drive. It'll get used quite a bit. That was a great idea by the steering committee or the public who brought that forward. Again, the Great Lawn. The wonderful thing about this park, the number one thing that people want in almost all inventories of parkland is trails. The great thing of this park is that you have a series of looping trails that take you around the park, but it also connects you into the neighborhood so that you can actually go out there and walk 3 or 4 miles worth of sidewalk and not do the same walk. This is the neighborhood corner and a restroom, half-court basketball, playground, and water play. And so this is what that water play could look like, and then I have a series of images of what the playground could look like. What we tried to do here is make sure that that shelter is located so that it has access to the Great Lawn, but it also has access to these other amenities, but that this piece could work independently. So if I'm using this for a family reunion or my business is coming down here, you can still have kids, still have splash, still have basketball. That doesn't impact the use of this. Also, we wanted to create a small room or a small lawn for small kids, large lawn for large kids. Images of what a water play could look like. And then this was an image that one of the kids loved in the play, and so we decided to bring this forward. Maybe the play is more appropriate for a more natural-looking play that has a tendency to blend into the natural landscape, which is basically 2/3 of this site. Plus, this would be relatively a new type of play experience in this town. So we're probably in the master plan promoting this to a greater degree. So it's about, sorry about that. So it's about climbing. It's about trees or fake trees. And then you can still do all the things of traditional play. It just looks a little bit different. And one of the things I like to put in parks for kids, and frankly for folks my age as well, are zip lines. These are tremendously used in other communities throughout the state. So you could have your traditional play and your zip line as well. And all of that would fit then in this neighborhood corner. You get into the fishing pier and the access, what I'd say, to the more wild areas. So this is the fishing pier. You'd have a shelter up here. You'd have, again, ADA access to the fishing pier. That fishing pier could come out to here, or you could pull it back, depending upon when this is actually built. There's a honey hole out here. It's a little bit deeper than everywhere else, and that's probably the best fishing location. And so if you'd like to be able to get to a place where all persons, including people with disabilities, could cast and access those fishing areas. If you want to do shoreline fishing, or if you want to dump a kayak in, we're providing all kinds of walks down to locations along the shoreline. I'll show you what that looks like here in a little bit. This shelter then has parking specifically for kayaking. Continuing on. And so when we did the visual listening exercise, much like we did when we did it for the original pavilion, this was the image that people had a tendency to bite off on quite a bit. And it felt a little bit more like state park architecture or national park architecture. I think that's because they knew it would be close to the areas that are wild. And so we wanted to figure out how do we blend the pavilion architecture with a little bit different architecture. So this is how we've done it. Taken elements of the lodge, and then we tried to replicate those in a more cost-effective way so that we could have the architecture throughout the park look like it belongs to the pavilion, but it's a little bit different. And so we've gone through a series of diagrams and sketches of what this potentially could look like, master planning process that we worked on. So this was what the steering committee selected for the restroom, the shelter that would go here and potentially here. And then this is what the open air shelter would look like if you didn't want a restroom here. And it would be a smaller unit just of this here and here. And so this is what this looks like in 3D. Plan view with restroom, plan view with shelter, illustrative renderings for structures. This is where the playground is. That's literally the confined, but we have this wonderful area where you can get probably 30 to 50 people underneath the shelter right here. But if you wanted to have an event where it's 75 or 85, you could fill up this whole space. This is the overlook, and then you could have a little burn pit right there looking out onto the lake. That's what it looks like from the side. This is the pier. That's what it would look like from the road looking at the pier. Fortunately, we fall off the face of the earth here, and it's just sky and nothing else. So one thing that we've tried to do is bring commonality of materials so that there is a consistency here from the pavilion to the neighborhood corner to the site furniture, making sure that we have options depending upon where you place them. We've come up with a signage system that mirrors some of the detail of the building. Oops. There we go. Or I'm going to get myself sick. I'm sure you guys are too. Okay, so this is, we created a plan for the roundabout here. If someday it became a priority to create more of a sense of arrival when people are driving into this facility, we've tried to mirror some of the architecture from the facade and bring that out here. The majority of the majority of that would be just a better concrete out there, so all those large trucks that are driving around that thing, they can actually drive on that concrete and not negatively impact the interior. I know that's a challenge for us right now. So where would we put the signs? These are the family of signs, and these are the locations that they would go. We're recommending that if you wanted to, the idea of creating a family of signs that really talk about the essence of specific place. So one of these could be the pavilion image, one of these could be the neighborhood, young kids playing, and one of them could be the wild. These are the graphics that were created for the byway system in the state of Iowa. These are the graphics that we're creating for Kansas, and we're doing the same thing for Oklahoma. And then the thought is, okay, why is the pavilion in this park? A steering committee that came down to Des Moines and visited 5 facilities. And every one of those facilities said there are certain things that you have to get right. But the number one thing that you have to get right, if you have a view, take advantage of it, because it'll make you all kinds of money. And so what we wanted to do is make sure we understood where the views were, where to place the building, and how to access those views visually and physically. And so what we want to do is make sure that we can create a more prairie look, a more the wetlands, and then provide safe and accessible access down to the shoreline edge to the greatest degree that we can. Your access would always be in the same place. It's just that it's stepped with stone or concrete. And then one of the members that talked to us in the steering committee said, wouldn't it be nice if we could actually create a water feature in the lake so that when people driving by can see that, and when people are walking around the lake, they can see that. And so this could be lit, or this could not. There's great environmental benefit here, and there's great aesthetic benefit here. And so what we were asked to do is create a little bit of text that describes things, create a lot of graphics. So depending upon the funding source, you could create a funding package so that we can go to Des Moines, just like maybe it's the neighborhood corner, maybe it's the trail, maybe it's the restoration, so that you can take this PowerPoint, the images, put them in a document, and quickly go after external funding sources. And so the question is, what's the first project? That's up to you. Often you are asking me, and other communities ask, well, how do we do the whole thing all at once? So I'm 54. I graduated from college when I was 23. I've worked in the park and rec market my whole entire life. I have maybe 3 park projects where they did it all at once. But we just did the building. The question will be, what's the next project that we're going to do? Is it the neighborhood corner? I personally, again, it's not my choice. This guy right here, I'm an economic development guy, because I know if we can tie economic development with parks, there's greater meaning, either economic development or health. I love the idea of developing this neighborhood corner. If that's the case, we could get more rooftops out here, because people would flock to a place. There's a park right across the street. If you're shaking your head, that happens. Okay. Well, there's a park right here. Okay. So another consideration then would be the trail. Another consideration would be the large open space. So again, not my job to identify what your next budget is. It's not my job to identify what your next priority is. That's up for your community to do. What my task was to do is create a plan so that you knew where you're going in the future. It's your job to figure out what that timing is. Thank you very much. Any questions?
I have one, Mike.
Yeah.
Something that I've been asked frequently since our last time that we got together. I really don't want to run your phone. Do I have to?
Yes, you do.
Hello, Mike. Some regarding these plans is the amphitheater, and that people do not want that to block the view from the pavilion looking out. Now, when I look at amphitheater in our drawings, it's more of a patioed area, not the band shell. Could you elaborate on the amphitheater?
So the great thing about that site, can you hear me okay, Mayor? The great thing about that site is you go out about 20, 30 feet from the terrace in the back, and then the slope drops off, and there's another terrace out. We would build that so you have about a 2-foot high wall, and that wall is really there for seating, and more importantly, it's so you have plug-ins for power. And so we want it to be as low as you possibly can. We would prefer that you don't even see it when you're inside the pavilion. So it's meant to be very, very low key. almost it'll have a tremendously limited footprint on the site. Other questions? She said 3 or 4. No, that's it.
No, that was it. All right, this looks great. Next.
Anyone else here in the room? Questions for Mike? Yeah.
Hold on.
Here.
Yeah, that pier, that at the end of the dock, it's the way I understand it, it's 10 feet off the water out there. Is that correct?
No.
Well, I fished for years. Years at the hobby. It isn't the best fishing experience, fishing 10 feet of water and 10 feet off the water. And if it's dry here and it goes 3-4 feet lower, you're fishing 14 to 15 feet off the water.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make it very fun for fishing kids.
So you could fish there, or we also have another, I think it's 7 to 10 shoreline fishing sites.
Oh, that's another issue.
So you have a site. You have a multitude of sites to fish.
That's
from.
another issue.
Good.
I fished them many times.
Okay.
When water raises, they get algae on them. They get slippery, very slippery. I know I went down on them how many times.
Okay.
It isn't the safest situation. Sometimes.
It's not what?
It's not the safest. For kids to be climbing on them rocks, slippery like that. We had a situation up there, of course, I was running water up Sioux Falls where a child went in. I'm not quite sure that's a wise idea.
So let's go to another way. Do you agree that fishing is desired here?
Well, I like fish. We could run them down money.
Okay. So
a lot cheaper than
it
that.
would be accessible?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Handicapped accessible?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what about the shoreline fishing?
Fish shore, like they're normally cast out there.
So we've done a couple of these fishing
Well, I
shoreline.
might work in Oklahoma, but it doesn't work in Sheldon, Iowa.
How about Des Moines, Iowa?
I doubt it.
Okay. Good.
They do a lot of things in Des Moines.
Thank you, Marv.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
So you're anticipating that we would be eligible for grant money to support this project, right? Because the last time I checked our city budget, we don't have $6 million laying around to be used. And if we did, we'd probably want to do our sewer upgrades. Am I correct?
Are you asking me about funding?
So yes, from a grant perspective, whose responsibility is it to write for those grants? How do we find out who those grants are? And on projects like this that you've done before, what percentage of the project has actually been funded by grant money?
Yeah, so the Department of Economic Development usually, well, their CAT grant used to be about 22%. They like to be the last one in, and it come in somewhere between 18 22%. So I think that's where we were when we did the pavilion. So they love the idea of having a pavilion. It'd bring people to town. People would buy gas. They'd get exciting project. They're now down. They've shrunk that number. Instead of 18 to 22, they're now in the 15% range, last one in. So, but that's still a viable grant. Other viable grants would be REAP. There's no match. There are DOT trails that are becoming harder and harder. I think the REAP would be a great one for habitat restoration and for your fountain, frankly, because there's no match to it. And I've helped Iowa and I've helped Bettendorf apply for REAP grants. Those were the number 1 and number 2 grants because I think they're getting tired of just doing trails all the time. I think they're trying to figure out how to do the habitat. So the question is, right out of the gun, could you start some of this habitat development first and then figure out how are you going to fund a lot of these larger efforts? That would be a path of travel. One thing that Kurt will do once we get the plan finished, we'll do the same thing we did in the pavilion. We'll go down and talk to the folks at Iowa Economic Development and Tourism and talk to them about, is this a project that could likely be funded through Department of DOT or the DNR? And they were great about it last time. They said, I think your biggest bang for your buck would be right here in the economic development because we think there's economic development here. And so we chased that pretty hard. We didn't chase the environmental. We didn't chase the other grants because, frankly, at the time, that was enough for us to chew. And so the thing that we would do is go down to Des Moines I don't mean to say fish with this, but we would go fishing with this plan and see what kind of interest there would be down there.
Because certainly the impact or input that I've received from community members, and I would agree with them and was also expressed at the last meeting, is to me the priority is to get the trail around there, to get some trees coming, because your impact is nothing without that. And then down the line with, and I think the fishing pier probably was discussed. I know what happens when you have geese and a playground.
Yep.
So I would say there is a playground 2 blocks away from that area. So trying to stay in that more natural theme just seems to make sense. And we talked about even having some arboretum type stuff makes way more sense to me. It's just we have a budgetary issue in this community,
totally do.
and we have a problem with maintaining things we currently have.
Yep.
So
Totally get it. In fact, I would say there's a project in Des Moines, or Gray's Lake. So it right after '93, it flooded. So the number one thing they put in that park, so that park is 160 acres, this one's 40. But the most of it is water. They put a trail around a lake. It's used all the time. It's crazy how much use it. But they also restored habitat.
Right.
And so the benefit of people walking through prairie, walking through a little bit of woods. Now, they did a thing called the Southwest Corner, so you can park, because you have to build some parking. And then they did some shelters down on the other side. And so people who have family reunions or whatever, they use that, but they didn't overdevelop. And that's what we were asked to do here, not overdevelop. Now the question is a playground too much? Maybe it is. What happens if it's a natural play?
Oh, I like the logs.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so do I, but...
I could drag a few out there.
Right, okay, well, we might take them. Thank you for the question. Your name is?
Lori. Anderson.
Yeah, thanks, Lori.
Anyone else?
I would like to jump off of what she said and kind of help to clarify something here. Is you said that if we were to start, say, with the trails or the rehabilitation of the habitat, that could be concrete steps we could take to make ourselves more attractive to obtaining grants from state-funded agencies, correct?
Yeah, I got to make sure I understand that question. Typically, what I like to do is bundle projects. We're not going I can't say what we're going to do, but I don't know how we can do the whole project at one time. So the question would be, which one gives you the best bang for your buck, or health, quality of life for your buck?
For within the community, for the people in the community,
for the people within the community. So trails are the number one thing on state park surveys. In your survey, it was the number one thing. In most communities, trails are the number one thing. And then it goes from there based on what community you're dealing with. The trail makes a whole lot of sense. Again, not my job to prioritize. I have a tendency, so skip the playground. Again, not my job to say that. But what happens if you put the shelter restroom in? And the playground comes on down the road when you figure out maybe there's a need for playground, maybe there's not. And so you get a really nice shelter, a really nice restroom, a little bit of an overlook. It's kind of on the super highway, but it's a little bit off of that walkway. The nice thing about that, the folks that I'm walking the trail with probably aren't going into the pavilion because people are getting married there. And so I need a place to go to the restroom. I need a place for my kids to go to the restroom because I got an 11 and a 13-year-old. So the shelter makes a lot of sense. It's in the neighborhood area, so you have to plan it all out even if you don't build it. Just like your roads in your community. You figure out your roads because they create the skeleton, and then everybody comes in after that. Same thing here. We got to figure out where the trail system is. Then we got to figure out, we can't let that trail system negatively impact future development as we need it 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Back to your question.
Right. So those things that you're talking about building up the skeleton, the structure of this whole project. And you are also talking about obtaining funding from some state agencies, the DNR, the DOT were both named. And if we were to start doing these little things now, would that make us more attractive to obtaining a grant?
I think it was. So again, sorry, Mayor. First thing I do is chase a REAP grant. It's free. It's not free because Kurt's got to write it, or you can write it. You can help him write it. Yeah. You got the graphics. It's done. And I can help a little bit, but it's free. It's free. And it's I don't know what your, so Iowa City, Bettendorf, I think Iowa City got $200,000 of no match. Iowa City got, or the other town got $150,000. Now, you're in a lower sized community, so your max isn't nearly as great. But I can get some of my habitat built. I get some of my trees planted. I can come in and get rid of my thistle. I can do a lot of that stuff. Now, the benefit of knowing exactly where your trail is, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time mucking around right where that trail's going to go. One, there are outside funding sources that can help you chase trail dollars. The issue is, once you start going and you get a grant, what you want to do is not use your dollars as match. You want to use that grant as match. And you want to build it in a way where you're kind of the first one in, but you're the last one in too. That's just bundling grants. So because most grants need a match. REAP doesn't need a match, but you can use that $120,000 as a really nice match to all your trail projects. Now you got a trail and habitat restoration project. See what I'm saying? So there's a little bit of study, a little bit of going down to Des Moines, figuring out what are the funding sources that are now available, and how could we build upon them. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
What's your name?
Caleb.
Caleb, thanks for asking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback a little bit on what Lori had said too.
And your name is?
Kerwin Sterler.
Kerwin, thanks.
The trail, obviously, without that, I that's the place you start. I guess if you put trees and prairie grass and a pollinator area in, that you wouldn't want to go tear it up with trail construction.
So the thing there would be, if we got that built, they can slit form. In fact, who'd we talk to about that? That you could come in and you could go out and stake it now. Now that we have a plan, it's all done in AutoCAD, so you know where it is. You could actually stake that, go off 20 feet either way, and you can do anything you want out there as long as you know, as long as we approve what I'd call the right-of-way of where that trail is, and more importantly, how it intersects with the neighborhood park and where it intersects with whether it's your pier or my pier. It doesn't matter. Just as long as we get fishing, that's what I care about. Like what I tried to show you in the pavilion plant, that thing changed 10,000 times, it seemed like. But we finally got a building built. So it's going to change. Was that your question?
Yeah, a couple other things, Mike. On that park, I rode around town and I seen the other little parks we had. And it seems to me like what's going to be built here is a whole new park. It's what we have downtown in the Central Park. Then you have that splash pad. When we first discussed this, I thought they were going to be doing some cutting out of things, and I haven't seen anything cut, I don't believe. That splash pad, for example, we have a water park, more or less, we're a swimming pool now where kids, that's what they belong. We don't need kids in the West End riding a bike clean out that thing to be on a splash pad. You see? And just a minute, basketball court. What's Thurman Park they have a nice little play. That's a little neighborhood park. We'll take a look at it. That's a little neighborhood park. Is what you're creating here is a whole new park. We're going to ruin our Central Park. You're going to ruin this on Central Park. That's what they're trying. I think that's what the main goal is here, I believe.
You think I've been...
I think that's what it's going to do. I really do, Mike. I really do. This thing has got completely out of control. We can't take care of how... I haven't heard anything about maintenance. What does it cost to keep these things up? Parks and all this other business? We haven't heard any of that. In the first place, I don't even know why we're talking about this today. We have parks that we can't keep up now. We get deteriorating.
So tell me this. Do you think it's important to get just the trail built?
Right now, absolutely not. We can't afford to do nothing.
So nothing?
Well, the trail is nice to walk on. I love the trail. But the fact is, we don't have the money to do it.
Okay.
You know, that's part of the whole problem. Once you approve one thing right away, the whole thing is, oh, they approved that back in July or whatever it is. So we got to do that. We don't need it. What's wrong with just a little community park? I don't care if we build a little restroom out there. That's not an issue. But my goodness gracious, we can't even start talking about that. Our infrastructure, you heard that, that's falling apart. We got our city park up here, some major problems.
I think all of those discussions probably should be...
Yeah, I think you're getting way ahead of yourself here. This is just a presentation, and there's no decisions being made today or in the near future. This is just a presentation to get the juices flowing, get us to think about what could happen out there potentially.
Right, why didn't we plan on a little park like Thurman Park out there? Just playground equipment. Why didn't we do that?
You attended the meetings, didn't you?
Yeah, I sure did. I sure did.
I'm not
Talk
sure.
about that's more than a neighborhood
I
park.
don't know that because, Marv, it's a hopes and dreams right now. It's not a reality. It's just a plan to get us thinking. And if we could make this happen, you look at the Thorman Park, you look at this, which would you rather stop and play, have your grandkids play in?
It was a big park, Central Park.
I didn't ask about Central Park. I asked Thorman Park or the park as he presented today.
I've been to Thurman Park.
What do you
with
think
kids,
is
my
more
grandkids.
attractive in terms of a community amenity? What would
I
be
think
more
that's
attractive?
I think there's a very attractive. What we built Thurman, I think, is a very attractive little neighbor park for them people out there.
What is more attractive? That's a simple question.
May I say one thing? How many parks do we have in Sheldon right now? I'm sorry, I'm butting in. How many parks do we have in Sheldon right now? 5. Are people playing in those parks every day? No. Yes, if you drive around, there are people in our parks every day. Kids are playing at Thorman, they're playing at Skimper, they're at Hills Park, they're at City Park, they're everywhere. They're at the schools. And as we continue to grow, it's another place for people to play. Now, it's a dream. Right now, it's a dream. I attended most of those meetings, some I couldn't. It's a dream. And it's up to you guys, council, mayor, where might that dream lead us? Do we develop it? Do we not? Right now, it's a dream on paper.
It's planning for the future, correct?
Exactly.
That's correct.
Looking ahead to.
What can we bring in the future? So right now, to beat up Mike, or I'm sorry, to badger or question Mike where all this came from, it came from us. It came from all these people who put green and red dots on these pictures. Children and adults. Well, let's face it, we're big kids. And what we want to see and what we don't want to see. We're growing. To have another park, whether it's green space or a playground or a trail or a fishing pier, and people fish right there now too, Mark. I'm out there every day, I see it.
I just said it is. Sure it is.
So, it's a dream. Now let's let Mike finish his presentation and you guys decide what do you want to do next.
Any other questions?
Mayor, council, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Appreciate your work. All right, I think we have come to the end of our agenda. So I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
All right, roll call, please.
Farahona.
Aye.
Hint.
Aye.
Brewster.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.